and thank you for joining us here at Dimension 2022. My name is Brad Hopper. I am the GM for the Quantrix business. I've been with Quantrix for a little over 2 years now, really having a great time working with the fantastic team and especially working with you, our wonderful customers. I'm going to give you a presentation today called New and Next, and so let me go ahead and share my screen so that you can see that. Quantrix New and Next. All right, so what I thought I would do for today's first presentation of the day is first catch a few of you up just in case you haven't seen our What's New videos or you haven't upgraded your particular version of Quantrix Modeler to the current release or a near current release. And I'm going to walk through some of the features that we released in our immediately prior release or our last production release, and that's Quantrix 22.1, the first release of 2022. I'm going to walk through some slides illustrating each of those features, and then what I'm going to do is going to switch over to Quantrix 22.2, which we have not yet released, but we are anticipating that we will release that in the next week or so very soon, and you will start to see those behaviors here. So I want to make one comment about this 22.2 because I'm not going to demonstrate this particular thing, but I want to talk to you about it before I dive into the slides for 22.1, and that is this new feature called Update Modeler from Cloud. So it's not technically updating the modeler from cloud, but one of the things that we've seen is that when we make a new release of Quantrix Modeler, your Quantrix modelers phone home and they discover that there's a new version available, and they will prompt you to automatically update. And if you make an update, and you are using an enterprise cloud that is different, currently sitting at a different version than the modeler that you're using, then you might run into a compatibility error if those particular versions haven't been explicitly made compatible, which we actually have done over the last couple of releases. But this enhancement, what it will do is if you have a cloud of your own, an enterprise cloud, when your modeler phones home, it'll phone home to your own cloud, and it will determine at that point whether or not you should be ready for an update. And when that cloud is updated, it will say, great, there's a new version of Modeler for you, and you'll be redirected to go and get that new version. So we hope to, with that new feature, allow people to update as soon as they get that button and not have to think twice about it because they have their own enterprise cloud. So that'll be a fantastic feature that reduces a little bit of the confusion, but gives you the option to go ahead and click that update button as soon as you see it and get the latest Quantrix Modeler. All right, so with that, let's walk through some of the newest features here in Quantrix 22.1. So first of all, importantly, is single sign-on. So the first thing I want to say about single sign-on is that it is part of Cloud Enterprise Plus, which is a new tier for the Cloud Enterprise offering that we released with that last version. It's a little bit of a soft release because what we did is get in touch with all of the customers who we believe were using features that would require them to transition to Cloud Enterprise Plus and have worked that out with those individual customers. But going forward, new customers, or if you expand your use model and use case with Quantrix, you might consider upgrading to Cloud Enterprise Plus. And I'll talk about that in the next slide, more about what's in Enterprise Plus, but more about single sign-on. So first of all, I think everybody knows what single sign-on is. What that allows you to do is to log in to a given system. In this case, we're talking about Quantrix Cloud, using your corporate credentials. So if your company has deployed a single sign-on infrastructure, then you'll be able to use the same passwords to log into your regular email systems and VPN systems and so on, as you can use those same passwords to log into Quantrix Cloud. So we did a bit of a survey amongst our customer base about which IDPs, that's an identity provider, were in use by our customers. And as it turns out, over 90% of you responded that you were using Microsoft Azure AD if you had a single sign-on infrastructure. So the first version of single sign-on from Quantrix supports Azure AD, and we have actually deployed that a couple of times already, including in our own premises. So when we log into Quantrix Cloud, and indeed via Quantrix Modeler, we use our own single sign-on to get in there. So that works great. So as I said here, you log in with your corporate credentials. And then I wanted to, I think I just alluded to this, but also in addition to logging directly into cloud on the in your browser using the single sign-on, the cloud infrastructure that you connect to will broker the connection between Modeler and your single sign-on infrastructure using OAuth. So you don't really need to worry about the technical underpinnings of that, but basically you'll get the same kind of workflow when you log into Modeler as you see when you log in directly to cloud through your browser. Both the browser and Modeler will capture tickets from your IDP, which will expire over time, but that can refresh. So the way that you use Quantrix single sign-on should be very familiar for you if you already use a single sign-on infrastructure at your company. Now, I wanted to point out also, importantly, this will coexist with username and password for signup. And this is especially important for those of you who are using Cloud Enterprise Plus, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. Okay, so let's skip here ahead to Cloud Enterprise Plus. So you can get this little checkbox here that shows which features are in which tier of Cloud Enterprise or Cloud. You can go check that out online. But for now, I wanted to just kind of point out what's the rationale that we use to create this new tier? What's it for? And in general, why do we have the features that we have in Enterprise Plus compared to not Plus? So first of all, a number of our customers have just 10 or so users of cloud. We have others that have many hundreds of users of Quantrix Cloud. So when you have larger deployments, when you have more users, if you have indeed maybe a smaller deployment, but you use really, really large models that require more performance from that infrastructure, then you might need to gain access to Enterprise Cloud or upgrade to Enterprise Cloud. We have a special new class of user these days who are not only a large internal customer user, but who are sharing Quantrix applications with their customers and partners outside of their firewall. And often what they're doing there is so-called configure, price, and quote, or CPQ. I think Lindsay's going to say a few words about CPQ a little bit later on this morning. But basically, the idea is you might take a template with a quote model and then make a copy for a new customer and share that with them on the cloud. And so why did I say earlier that the username and password is compatible with single sign-on? The reason is because you might want to log into your own cloud infrastructure using single sign-on, but invite your external customers to come to your cloud and use a specific quote with a specific password that they can sign up for directly on a self-service basis. So it works very well kind of coordinating between your infrastructure style login and your guest logins for customers and partners. We do plan to make future enhancements, in particular for areas like application development and kind of supporting partners who want to deploy applications on our cloud. All right, next feature, 22.1, we introduced Summarize. Summarize allows you to create a very large number of summaries automatically by clicking this little blue chevron style button, these little blue arrows, and they will not only create a summary item for any place in the hierarchy or in a set of items that you've clicked on, but they will also hide the unsummarized items. So this in effect allows you to roll up and drill down very transparently across very complex long data sets that have hierarchies, grouped items, and or multiple categories on the same axis. It behaves a little bit differently for one versus the other. Go and check out our What's New video if you want to see the details of that. All right, there's also a couple of shortcuts to help you summarize in different ways, either slicing down inside of the hierarchy or looking across a particular level. The Credentials Manager is a fantastic new set of functionality here, which allows Quantrix users, Modeler users, who have connections to many, many different data sources. I think tomorrow we'll have a presentation from our old friend Rich Lopez at Lighthouse, who showed us a model that had something like 20 different data sources making connections from just that single model. So you can imagine that if you have credentials for many, many different data sources, it can be good to manage them in one central location. That's what the Credentials Manager does. All of your local credentials on your local machine will be listed here. You can test them out, you can delete them, you can change the password, you can change your username, and you can also, importantly, push them using this blue arrow button, push them into the model that you happen to have open at that given time. And there, they can be used by some new scripting methods that we introduced to go along with the Credentials Manager, in particular one called Perform with Embedded Credentials. So if you create a credential in this way, you push it into that model, you can then write a script that just has one simple command. It doesn't reference the credentials or the username or password in any way, but it automatically will look up credentials that are associated with a given data import matrix and use those for the login. So when you need to change and manage your credentials, you don't need to edit your scripts at all. So this saves a ton of time for managing models that contain lots of different connectivity options. Okay, let's move on. The last feature that I want to talk about is a very tiny feature, but the reason why I wanted to mention it and show it here is because we're going to talk a lot more about buttons in the rest of this presentation here. So in 22.1, we made it possible to change the name of your button, to change the label of your button to be different than the name of the script. Historically, you would open up this button, you would write a new, edit button dialog, you would write a new script, and then the name of the button would be the same as the name of that script. Now you have the freedom to change the name of that button. All right, so let's move on to Quantrix 22.2. In this part of the show, I will not be showing you slides, but I'll show you a live demonstration here. Okay, so here we are in Quantrix 22.2. And let's see, let me change that to 3. Little typo there. Okay, so in Quantrix 22.2, we have a couple of awesome new features. The first one I want to show you quickly here is called delete a formula while retaining the values from that formula. A number of you have requested that we be able to do a kind of structured data entry where you might want to create a formula, but then you want to be able to overwrite those directly in the cells from that formula. We're going to see some information from Ben Wake a little bit later on this afternoon about the override pattern, but this, in this case, is something even simpler than that. I'm going to go to my sales item here. I'm going to hit the equal sign. Then I'm going to type in a formula, rand between 10,000 and 50,000. Now I'm going to hit return, and you'll see, of course, I have the numbers that appear here. Now this new option, I can right-click on this formula, and I can delete it as always, but I can now delete without clearing. That means get rid of the formula, but leave the values here. So now they're fully editable, even though they were created with a kind of structured intention in mind. In my case, just a random intention. Okay, so that's an awesome new feature. Now the next one I want to talk about here is what we're calling item filters. What is an item filter? In the past, it has been possible for you to create filters. Actually, I'm going to open this one here, the edit cell filters. You've seen this dialog before. I can create filters in here that affect the values in my matrix. But if I wanted to filter out items, I would need to use an expression and use some kind of keywords, some kind of unusual keywords in Quantrix language in order to filter out items. So what I'm going to do now is show you the new item filter. So what I can do is hover over any category in my matrix, and you'll see this little filter icon appearing. If I click on that filter icon, you'll see that a tree gets built that shows me all of the values, the unique values in my in that category. So now I think you would know what the obvious behaviors are. If I uncheck this, it will hide those items from my matrix, which is really, really convenient and a super easy way to exclude items from the matrix without having to write some kind of complicated filtering formula. So we've named this item filters, and we've also made it available in the right-click menu for a given item or a section or a group within a set of categories or hierarchy. So you'll notice that the right-click options have changed a little bit here. We've added a couple of new things. We've renamed filter to, that we used to be just called filter, to cell filters. And a cell filter is the classic kind of filter. And then we've introduced this new kind of filter called an item filter. And here we can directly in the right click go to filter items, and I can hide the one that I selected. So I just hid office, or I can hit undo. Maybe I'll pick a couple of different products here. and I can go again here to filter items and hide maybe the unselected. So what that does is hide everything except the ones that I have selected. Now, I wanted to show you also one more little trick here that I think is quite powerful with the item filters. And that is we have search built into those item filters. So if I would like to, I can say search for products 1, and you'll notice that products 1 appears in my office group and my furniture group. So here I can uncheck at the top level of my products category, remove only those products 1, and then when I click back out again, you'll notice that it has removed them from every portion of the hierarchy where it exists, but I've left all of the other ones. So it's a very, very powerful way to select and unselect patterns within multiple different groups or different parts of your category. So that is the item filters. And I showed you the right-click context. Now I want to move over to another new feature called Boolean, a new kind of Boolean checkbox limitation on items. So, or rather on cells. So let me show you how that works. So first of all, I have a very simple formula here that indicates a set of numbers. This is my favorite fruit here. By the way, eggplant is a fruit, if you didn't know that. And I've got some numbers again that I created using that clear formula while leaving the values on the cells. And what I'm going to do is just re-enable, using another feature that we introduced in the last release, this automatic commenting using the control / reintroduce this formula here. So now I can see that I have a total for all of these numbers that adds up to 310,000 or something. So what I want to do is add a new item here, and I'm going to name this one numbers minus in this case. And what I'd like to do is constrain the input of numbers minus to a Boolean value. So what I can do is right-click this item, and I'll do constrain input. And now you'll see that there's a new choice here called Boolean. And within this Boolean choice, I can display the Boolean values in a variety of different ways. My favorite one here is the checkbox, and I'll show you that, but you can also choose true, false, 1 or 0, yes, no, or custom values of your choosing, fast, slow, whatever the choices you want to put in there for your user in your particular model. Now we have the option also, if you use the checkbox, to show the box always, which is the default here, or to show the box only on hover. And I'll go ahead and check that one so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to display this Boolean checkbox. I hit OK. Now, because I'm only displaying the checkbox on hover, you'll see that this cells still look clear until I hover over them. Now, what I want to do is add a new formula. I've created it ahead of time here like a cooking show. Let's take a look at how this formula reads. What it says is the total, the range of total and numbers minus, so that's this cell right here, is, and maybe is going to I think I might need to go and unconstrain this last one here. Let me just do that. Constrain input. I'll set this one back to any because I don't want to overwrite that unconstrained. So here's this formula. The summary of SUMIF fruit numbers minus, and if so, if the value is 1, then fill in the fruit numbers. So if I go ahead and add this formula here, it's already been added, and then I start to check these boxes, you'll see that this number here, 48,573, is being checked against this condition. So if the fruit numbers cell there equals 1, which a checkbox equals 1, then use the number from the fruit numbers item, which is the one over here. So as I add these checkboxes, I end up getting a conditional sum. So I can turn on and off those numbers, and you can see when they're all checked, it adds up to the exact same number as this one. So amazing new feature. This one was actually requested in the IDBS Ideas portal. It was one of the top requested items of all time. And actually, between this checkbox feature and the item filters, it also relates very strongly to one of the features that you voted on last year, and we'll talk about this a little bit in later today in our roadmap session, where you voted on the ability to put make multiple choices in the filter tray. So we'll come back to that in a little while this afternoon. Okay, so I have two more features that I want to talk about. I've got about 8 minutes to including questions, so I'll see how quickly I can get there. The first one of those two is called Smart Buttons. So I'm going to go and open up a canvas here, and I'm going to add some buttons to that canvas. Now, if you recall what I showed you earlier, we had that write a script and was the only way to create a button. With Quantrix 22.2, I have a whole series of new options. I can create a button to open a canvas, a specific canvas that I might have here. I can create a button to navigate to the next canvas, or I can create a button to navigate to the previous canvas. I can update a selected set of data imports, of which I don't have any in this particular case, or all of them if I have many. And I can also do the classic custom script button here. So what I want to do is take next and add that button. And then I want to do previous and add that button. I'll put that over here, move these around just so. And then what I want to do is duplicate this canvas. So I'm going to copy and then paste it. And actually I can just hit enter, can't I? I can make a series of canvases here. And what will happen is that actually it works better if I copy than I got my buttons, right? So let me try it one more time, copy and then paste. So now I have 3 canvases, and of course I would go name them in some appropriate kind of way. And notice that prior to adding that second canvas, the next button was grayed out. So what we've done is introduced what we call now smart buttons. These buttons can tell their context, is there a next canvas or is there not a next canvas? They will activate themselves if there is one, and when I hit this next button, guess what happens? I will navigate to that second canvas and then navigate on to the next one. So you'll notice a few different behaviors here. It's going to actually not only navigate, but make this next canvas the only view that's visible. And in that way, we're starting to support and facilitate the creation of applications that you might build for deploying your models to your customers internally or outside of your organization to your partners. And so you can see here, I've got a folder that contains these canvases, and you might have been asking yourself, like, how does the system know what next even means? Well, so that's how we're starting to evolve this idea of applications. This container folder here, the order as specified in here will define the order of that application. So here you can see I can either go back or forward. I can go to that previous one, and like so. So that's that feature. The smart buttons. And the final feature that I want to show you, I think hopefully I'll have some time here, is I'm going to import data from Salesforce. And we have a brand new option in the Salesforce imports. Historically, we've been able to, for quite some time, to connect to tables within Salesforce. But a lot of people who use Salesforce actually build custom reports. And now it's possible for us to make a connection to those custom reports. And I can connect and get a view of the recent reports that I might have used that have some perhaps custom calculations, some custom filters as applied in Salesforce, and I can take advantage of that configuration setup and bring that data right into Quantrix. Now, unlike a lot of applications that support Salesforce report connectivity, we have some fantastic functionality that makes it possible to use not only raw data from a report, but also aggregated information if it exists. So if I connect to this Quantrix lead table here and click on the aggregated information, this particular report happens to have aggregations built into it. So rather than bringing the raw data in and aggregating it in Quantrix, we can take advantage of that aggregation that, again, perhaps has some custom filters and some exclusions or inclusions in it that Quantrix is not aware of. We can take advantage of that in this aggregated data. Or if the report has detailed data, we can go ahead and get that too. So I can say, okay, And then we drop right into the data import, just as we always have with any kind of data import. So this is a fantastic new feature. And as a matter of fact, it takes advantage of that OAuth connection in order to make a connection to reports, and which opens the box perhaps for the future to take advantage of some other web services data connectivity in Quantrix. Okay, so I think I've finished the review of what's coming new and what's coming next in Quantrix 22.2, and maybe I'll open the floor for any questions that you might have.
So here's a quick question for you. What if I'm not using single sign-on but want to get Salesforce reports? Is that possible?
That's a good question. There is a relationship between the connection that we've made to Salesforce and the way that you can sign in. So first I'll explain that, and then I'll answer the question. So many organizations who implement single sign-on and use Salesforce will naturally support single sign-on with Salesforce, meaning that when you log into Salesforce in those organizations, just as we do, you use single sign-on. And so when you connect to Quantrix to Salesforce, you first need to connect up to Quantrix Cloud to make the connection to make that connection to your infrastructure using single sign-on. So you might think that you would be constrained from connecting to Salesforce reports if you don't have single sign-on. But as it turns out, the connection that we've made, or the way we've implemented that connection, you can automatically use the OAuth, which makes those reports available even if you don't have single sign-on configured. So there was some confusion in my own mind about that a while ago, but now it should be possible, whether you do or don't use single sign-on, to connect to the kind of web services-based connectivity of Salesforce reports in addition to the classic table access.
Thanks. We're also getting some other questions in the chat. It looks like some of them have been answered already, but let me just read out what we've seen so far. So, is filtering also available on descriptors? And can you control the item filter with an expression? Ben Wake already wrote a response here, so let me just read that. Think of the item filter as a multi-select and/or group selection filter tray. It is intentionally designed to be straightforward. Advanced users can still use cell filters to filter based on expressions, including item descriptors. We're also getting a few additional ones, but it looks like we're pretty much at time. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to set up the next presentation for Ben.